coming. My name is Caleb. I am a senior in high school, and I want to talk to you all about a couple of mesh radio technologies, such as Meshtastic and MeshCore, and how that is kind of prevalent around us in the Susquehanna Valley. So this was my lightning talk from CPOS this year, and I've kind of expanded on a couple things, and yeah, just overall a little bit of expansion. I have a demo in here as well, so hopefully that goes to plan. So first, I want to talk about what exactly these are. They use a radio modulation technology called LoRa. It stands for long range, and it is not a protocol. The actual protocol is MeshCore and Meshtastic. That's something that's commonly confused, but LoRa is not actually a protocol. It's kind of similar to ham radio, but texting instead of audio, and you don't need a license to do it, which allows a lot of people to get into it. And one of the big highlights is that it's like a mesh system, so everybody can have like a node, and then they all communicate with each other at 915 megahertz. And by doing that, then they can relay messages across pretty long distances depending on which protocol you are using. They are primarily line of sight, so you need to be either really close or directly able to quote-unquote see or have no obstructions between your node and the next node. This is commonly achieved by putting a big node on your roof or something, and that is more commonly going to hit other nodes on other people's roofs or on towers, things such as that. LoRa and these mesh protocols is off-grid. You do not need the internet to use these, which I will demonstrate shortly. They are quite portable. I have a couple examples of nodes here. This is one of them. It's just a bit thicker than a credit card, and that one's pretty easy to carry around in your pocket, in a backpack, whatever you need to do. They are fully digital, so it's not analog like you may be used to with some ham radio stuff. Yeah, that diagram there is just a brief kind of idea of how these systems work. So a lot of these radios don't actually have like keyboards on them or anything that you can directly text another user with. You often download the app beforehand on your phone or a laptop or whatever, and when you have that downloaded beforehand, that pairs it with Bluetooth or a local network connection or USB to said node, and from there you can communicate off-grid. You wouldn't need any internet connection after that app is downloaded at the very start. These are examples of some nodes. The one that I showed you on the far right is the one that I have here. It's a Seed Studio T1000E. It is just very pocket sized. It's got a buzzer on it, so when you get a message, it can beep. It also has like a heartbeat light and a button on it, so you can do a couple fun things with that. You can turn off the buzzer, of course, if it gets too annoying. An example of a standalone device is on the far left there. That's the Liligo T-Deck, and that has a keyboard on it. It's kind of like a Palm if you've ever used those before. But yeah, small keyboard, it's got a little scroll wheel on it, and that can run a full GUI app on it. You can text from that, things like that. An example of a node that people would commonly use, like I mentioned, on like the roof of their house, people often build nodes for that. So you would get an antenna, you get the radio, and you would wire everything up, put it in like a waterproof enclosure. And the radio you would use is one of the common ones. Is made by Rack Wireless, and it is the WizBlock. I put the WizBlock Mini up there. It's even smaller, but there are other ones that are a bit bigger. They are fully modular, so you can slot a GPS module onto there if you really want. But yeah, that you can use either the built-in antenna, which is pretty small. I have it on this SDR here. A built-in small antenna like that, or you can put a really big antenna like you see in that bottom center photo. That is a high-gain antenna that is on a tower node that was somewhat recently deployed about a month or two ago. And we're working to deploy a lot of these nodes around the Susquehanna Valley, and ideally, most of these can communicate with another tower node and build a pretty strong backbone infrastructure. A couple things to note about these mesh protocols is they operate on different frequencies. They have a bunch of different profiles too. So some of the profiles will go longer range than others, some are shorter range. Some are way at the top end of the 915 megahertz spectrum, some are way at the bottom end. And that just kind of helps. You can try to bypass interference if you're doing stuff with just yourself. But the default for Meshtastic is called long fast, and it's relatively long distance, and fast is a bit misleading. It's only a couple kilobits per second, but it does do the job. It's actually becoming a problem. It's almost too long range for us in the Susquehanna Valley because our density has grown so much that the messages are reaching way farther than they need to, and eventually at some point they just become interference. So there's consideration about moving to medium fast, which is a bit shorter range, a bit faster, and that could in theory help with density issues. But yeah, things like that. There are a couple people experimenting with using tower nodes with multiple radios on them, so they can have like a Yagi antenna, which is very directional, pointing between towers for a strong backbone, and then internally to the nodes on it or the radios on it, it would bridge packets there. So you could have an omnidirectional antenna like you see there to cover the local area, but a Yagi to reach farther distance. Kind of the same topology you might see with cell towers. I want to talk about how these are actually meshes. So I have examples of both MeshCore and Meshtastic. Meshtastic came first. It's still very commonly used, and the idea is that one node sends a message, and then another node hears that message and tells the rest of the world, hey, I heard that. And other nodes within range of that one won't repeat that packet. That ends up having a couple of issues with like network reliability. If you really need to get a message out, there's a chance it doesn't travel as far as you want it to, because another node that was closer but possibly at a less advantageous position said, I heard this, and then none of the other nodes that were at better positions actually repeated it because they heard your other node tell them that they already heard that message. MeshCore doesn't even listen to those ACKs, it just repeats it no matter what, which can help with reliability but also increases congestion to some degree. But MeshCore also is much lower range anyway. It's using a faster preset by default that travels over less distance, so congestion isn't a problem as much anyway. MeshCore came second. It is built kind of off the idea of Meshtastic, but they redid a lot of it based on what a couple of people found were like the big flaws with Meshtastic. And its goal has been to be much more reliable and things like that. So yeah, MeshCore repeats all the time. Meshtastic doesn't always repeat. And Meshtastic also has a bunch of different device types. So you would have a node like this, and it's called a companion. It never ever repeats any packets. Then you have other nodes that are on towers, and those are called repeaters. And repeaters will always repeat a packet no matter what. Meshtastic is a little different, in which a client device, which is what it calls like the node that you carry around with you, can actually repeat packets, but most of the time the device you're carrying with you, you want to not repeat packets because it can cause more congestion and overall a little less reliability, because the node in your pocket is never going to be the best node around. So you want to make sure that better nodes are the ones repeating packets. So Meshtastic has a profile specifically for this called client mute. Just listens, doesn't do any talking unless you send a text message. Yeah, so that's kind of Meshtastic's way to solve that. Another thing with Meshtastic is because of the whole thing I was talking about with advantageous positions for routers and whatnot, only devices that are in very good spots, like on towers, tops of mountains, whatever, only those devices should be a router. Otherwise, they're overall hindering the mesh because they're saying that they repeated a message. And they did, but it didn't travel as far as it could have. Next, I have a Meshtastic demo that I'm going to do. Let's hope this works. So, I have the Meshtastic app open on my phone here, which is in the center. I have the Meshtastic web client open on the left, and I have a software-defined radio open right here, so you all can actively watch devices communicate. I have two nodes in front of me. I have the T1000E, and then I also have an older node made by LilyGo. This one isn't doing the best because you're not supposed to run these with the antenna off because it will actually ruin the transmitter in it. And this may have been run with the antenna off one too many times. So it will hear messages, but it won't exactly send them. So what I will do here is we can, you're seeing data here actively being transmitted by one of these nodes. I'm not sure which one. The quieter stuff there would have been the one with the bad transmitter, and the louder stuff would be this guy. But yeah, so when you open the Meshtastic app, you are greeted with a page here where you can pair to a node. So my phone is paired over Bluetooth to this one node here, this guy, and then my laptop is also paired over Bluetooth to this node here. And we can actually see the text there. Let's try this. Okay, so when you open up the Meshtastic app, it looks like this. You can go down to a map and kind of see where exactly you are located. So these are all nodes around us, all Meshtastic nodes. These are just ones that little node in my pocket has heard. It is quite a lot, and they are all over the place. So if we even go, this node has a GPS module in it. So if we go down to Lancaster, we should see it in here somewhere. It's really hard to do this when I'm not directly on the screen. But yeah, it's somewhere around that. There, I think. But yeah, you can see the node there. You can see that they're actively communicating there. And some of these things that you're hearing could even be other nodes in Lancaster City. But what I will do is go in the app. You can look at other nodes that you've heard around. So it looks like recently, heard this node actually, just now, it heard a different node with a direct connection. You can see the SNR and the RSSI here. This is a node that it heard that is quite nearby, and what we can do is go over to the text tab here. We'll see that long fast is the default channel that's selected. So we'll open that up, and we will just type in message and hit send. So you saw there as I typed it, saw the graph here in the SDR, and it was sent because you can see here, you hold down and it says that the message was acknowledged and it heard one relay. So it heard one other node repeat my packet. Unless somebody has a node in here, we probably won't get a response. But you can also see that there's this node over here. I'll try sending a message, even though it has a bad transmitter. I don't know if it'll actually go through. Yeah, it's not looking like I'm actually getting a reply. But yeah, that's the whole idea. You can do off-grid. Oh, there it went. You can do off-grid communication like this. Yeah, everything like that. So that's pretty cool. That's the whole idea. Just texting between these two nodes. These are both on Meshtastic, but this one's the web UI, like I said. The web UI it's relatively similar to the mobile app, just in a different form factor. You can see all the nodes that have been heard on the side here. This is like the node that I have on the roof at home. Yeah, there's just a bunch of different things like that. You can look around in these apps. Yeah, so that was my demo of Meshtastic, and it actually worked. So Alright, we will go back to the presentation now. Feel free to interrupt with questions at any point in time. Yeah?
What are the limitations for the size of the message?
I think if you go back, I believe it showed the character limit. I forget the actual max size. 200 characters on these text messages. I forget what the actual byte size is of that, but it's limited to whatever the protocol kind of said. I think MeshCore's limit is slightly lower potentially because they're sending smaller packets with a higher reliability, like less time for the packet to get manipulated by interference. But yeah, similar things there. Any other questions? Yeah.
So are you able to identify by the name of your node, or do you have like a
you are identified by the name of your node. I can show you what this looks like when we go into settings on the node. But there are a number of settings for a node, but this is what I would appear to as somebody else. It shows my short name. There's the long name that they would also see. There are a couple IDs associated with every node. So the ID for a node is built off of its MAC address. Well, in Meshtastic, it's built off of MAC address. In MeshCore, it's randomly generated. You can tell this node set to client mute. Other people can see that data. This node also has a couple, this guy has two other sensors on it. It has a temperature sensor and a lux sensor. So, I don't know if there's enough light here, but if I put this face up, eventually, I forget how often this updates, but this would update with some light value. And then you can see the rough temperature of it just sitting on the table here. But yeah, there's also public and private keys that every node has. So they do encryption between nodes for like DMs and whatever. The long fast channel is unencrypted. That's just to anybody. And the idea is that everybody can see it. Yeah, there's also, you can see your position. You can set the accuracy of one of your positions. Like I think mine's set to like a mile of accuracy, so it only sends your location accurate down to about a mile. But you can change whatever you want that accuracy to be, and you can change the intervals. One of the best practices that we do is turn down how often these nodes are sending data, because that just will overall help with congestion. So I think this node only broadcasts its name whatever once every 12 hours or something similar to that. You just want that time to be as long as possible while still being somewhat reasonable. Like you want other people to see your node's name, but you don't want to unnecessarily clog with congestion and everything. Any other questions? And did I answer your question fully? Okay. All right. Okay. So, did the Meshtastic demo. Next, I want to talk a little bit about range here. So, I've been testing both Meshtastic and MeshCore. More recently, I've been doing MeshCore, but I went to Meshtastic for this demo just because that's the most popular thing around right now. But briefly, what I want to talk about here is range. You can, this QR code here will link to the official Meshtastic range tests, like the max range that anybody's gotten in testing with their nodes or whatever. And I think the current record is 205 miles on ground, and that was using, I'm not actually sure. Okay, that was using the very long slow preset. So there's long fast, and then like literally longest range, slowest one is very long slow. And that you can, if you can see, it's really small. There are modem presets there that it's using. And that was done in Europe, which operates on 868 megahertz instead of 915. I think they also do 433 megahertz in Europe, but the most common is 868. And fun fact, these nodes, like the ones you use in the US that do 915, can also be used for 868. The radio has that much capability in it. It can do both. You just want to put a different antenna on it that's tuned for that frequency, because your antenna really does matter. And yeah, you won't get very far if you're trying to use the 950 megahertz antenna at 868 megahertz. Yeah, that was one of the longest done records, and that was done using a RAP Wireless 4631, which was similar, which was the actual chip that was on the node that I had back here. The actual chip that's on that top center node is the RAP 4631. RAP Wireless recently came out with a 1 watt variant of that, which is the max allowable in the US 1 watt transmit. These are typically around like 0.17 watts, so you can pull a lot more power out of 1 watt and ideally go a bit further if you're line of sight and things like that. Yeah, so that was range officially from Meshtastic. The bottom half of this photo is when I was on MeshCore. If you'll see, the UI is a little different, which is why, because I was on MeshCore. And that was with this node here. There, occasionally, there's something happens called atmospheric ducting, where the radio waves go up, kind of get trapped in the atmosphere and travel way farther than they would otherwise. And this was a rare case of that happening a month or two ago. And I was hearing messages, like actively hearing messages from people in Connecticut, New York, at very low hop counts, like 2, 3-ish hops, which is quite impressive because even on Meshtastic in Lancaster, like I might only get 20 miles, and that would be 6 hops worth of data, which is impressive when you think about doing this in 2 or 3 hops. That's a big thing with MeshCore as well. MeshCore is so much lighter weight overall that it can do up to 64 hops. Meshtastic is limited to 7. By default, it's set to 5. You really don't want to go any higher than that because then again you risk congestion. MeshCore handles everything much better, the way that it routes just flooding packets, and because it's faster, it's able to do that, and overall is much more reliable because it can hop as many times, your packet can take many different paths and still reach back to you. So overall, it's much more reliable for multi-hop routing, but also you can get pretty long direct connections as well. So that was an example that I have there on the bottom. But line of sight really does matter for stuff like this, unless you have a rare case of ducting. But yeah. So I have a couple of resources here that we have for our local mesh that I want to briefly talk about. So one of the dashboards that is hosted for the Susquehanna Valley Mesh is called, I think it's Mala or Mala, I'm not exactly sure how you actually pronounce it. You can find it on GitHub. But this QR code will link to our local dashboard, which I have pulled up over here. So, so you can see overall total nodes that are being heard, info about our Meshtastic network and stuff like that. And you can see that there were, like at max, we've heard 660 nodes just between all these nodes here. There are 12 different data sources that this is pulling from. These are all different tower nodes and a couple people's home base nodes, and you can contribute to this through Meshtastic because one thing that Meshtastic can do, a lot of people don't do it because it kind of defeats the purpose, but is it can send to an MQTT server. So if you really want, you can have your node take data that it receives on its local radio, push it up to an MQTT server, and then another node somewhere could pull that data down and retransmit it. Once again, it kind of defeats the purpose of people wanting to be fully off-grid with these, because then you're relying on an MQTT server that's likely on the internet to relay these packets. But if you really wanted, you could enable MQTT on your node and then talk with people in LA, but you're not really using the mesh how you would originally think. MeshCore does away with that entirely. They want nothing to do with internet routing for any of this, so there's like no MQTT capability there whatsoever. But this is using MQTT to collect the data, and that's just local. It's only using it for data collection. It's not. It is uploading the messages to the server where it can read them, but then yeah, that's all it's doing. You can, in this dashboard, actively analyze all the packets coming from nodes, so you can see like which tower nodes received this, everything like that. You can tell like what the node type was, whether it was a client, a repeater, everything like that. You can see what signal the message was received at the packet. You can analyze these packets, do a bunch of things like that. There's also a long node list here that you can see every node that's ever been kind of seen by these nodes. I don't actually know if my node didn't appear because I haven't had this one on for very long. Fantastic. But you can index by order nodes and see like how many people have received data from your nodes, etc. Things like that. One thing you can do in Meshtastic is a trace route, so you can kind of see whose node you hopped through to get your message out, and you can try to do roundabout stuff like that. But this also intercepts all of those packets and shows you how people's messages, how many hops things were done at. So this was a 6-hop message from this person to this person, and it hopped through all of these nodes. And you can kind of analyze a packet like that and take a look at. I might have messed this up. There it is. But yeah, you can see how many hops you did these. So this is how many of the tower nodes heard this message and then sent it off to the server. There's a number of data points you can look at. You can even look at the path that this message would have taken. Yeah, everything like that. Yeah. So these are, which is the light mode. Yeah, so you can look at all the messages, or all the nodes that are out there. A lot of these, we're actually getting messages from Maryland and stuff occasionally. I think I've gotten a message from DC once. But yeah, this is kind of what we have built out, and it's relatively impressive when you think about it, all these nodes connecting to each other. Yeah, any current questions? Yeah.
So I know you said Sarah, the rate. And the current protocols, like, do they know in text messaging or have people explore like other protocols?
Yeah. Officially, it's only text messaging. There are some people who have messed around with sending like audio files or images over it. It takes forever, but it can be done. Nobody's tried doing it over actual infrastructure. They've just done it like at home between a couple of nodes. Nobody's tried to put it over the large mesh because that would probably ruin the experience for everybody for a little while because of how slow the data rate is. But it is technically possible. But not commonly done for certain reasons. Yeah.
So a lot of times with tech like this, you see it explode and people start experimenting with it, and then all of a sudden the FCC says, "Oh, we're going to take that spectrum that you love so much, we're going to auction it off the highest bidder." So what exactly is happening in that space? Have there been any rumors, or is it reasonably well protected because X, Y, and Z?
I believe it's relatively well protected. I haven't looked into that a ton. I vaguely feel like I heard a rumor that like the FCC was going to take it away, but I don't think that was actually going to happen because I'm fairly certain this shares frequency that's used by like electric companies will use Zigbee at 915 megahertz to collect their mesh data and stuff like that. And I believe it's in the same spectrum. So they couldn't restrict it to just that. It hasn't happened yet. Who knows if it might happen. But as of right now, it's open. And yeah, we'll see what happens with it. But as of now, it's open, yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned the line of sight requirement.
Yeah.
Does the curvature of the earth set it up a limit then, therefore?
Technically, yes. Over a long enough distance, you would. I mean, if you got it high enough off the ground.
That's assuming the Earth is curved, Tom.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
I think the jury's still out.
I mean, yes, technically, at a point, it could become a problem. Not in practicality, no. Yeah.
I do have a second question. Is there a node on top of the Grace building? Because if not, we do know some people who have offices in the Grace building.
I don't know. Do you know roughly where that would be?
Right.
The heart of Square.
The heart of Lancaster.
Is the Marriott taller?
And it was the tallest building. It might still be.
This map.
I don't honestly know. Did Marriott take over?
Marriott might take over.
I think either way, a guerrilla team should set one up on one of
Exactly.
the buildings. We have the technology. And
Yeah, I mean, if somebody has access, I mean, that would probably be a really great place for a node. But
access or motivation?
both. Both.
Sure, there's also a lot of radio towers and cell phone up there. There's a lot of
Yeah, so that is another issue. LTE radios close enough to these can really mess things up, just interference. So you need cavity filters, stuff like that if you're planning on deploying it anywhere near LTE. So you have to be careful about that. You wouldn't want to put this on the same tower as you would see LTE at. Yeah.
Has anyone put one of these on a drone and built like temporary node networks?
Yes, they have plenty of times. There's plenty of people have like hung nodes below drones and just see how far they can get, stuff like that. But also, a couple times I've seen people put them on weather balloons and send them way up, and you'll get messages, and suddenly you'll be like, why did I just see a node in North Carolina? And somebody's like, oh, there's another balloon up. And you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, things like that happen somewhat often, but that's all temporary, of course. Yeah.
Are there any projects trying to bridge
There is a firmware that will do both. I forget the name of it. It is limited to ESP32 hardware at the moment, but it can sit there, pull data for both of them, and it decodes by like the first hex character in the packet, I believe. But that's for ESP32 only, which is a kind of big asterisk that I should have mentioned under the nodes part. Like this node in my pocket is built on an NRF52, which is very power efficient, is Bluetooth only. The big thing is extremely power efficient. ESP32s can't say the same. So this node will last 2 days on an exceedingly small battery of, I can't read that. Yeah, I can't read exactly what size this battery is. But it's a really small battery. And this can last 2 days doing that, while an SP32 would maybe last 3 to 5 hours doing the same thing with the same battery. So people actually carrying around nodes will always have NRF52s on them, but there is a firmware for ESP32s that can do both.
Maybe last question back on the firmware. Do you have that specific firmware for a one Meshtastic or MeshCore, or like does it support all devices? Do you have to buy a specific device for the?
A lot of devices are supported by both. You do flash the firmware separately, of course. NRF52 chip-based devices are really nice for like root nodes because they can be OTA updated over Bluetooth. So from your phone at a whopping 6 kilobits per second over Bluetooth, you can update the firmware of your device. But yeah, a lot of these devices are supported by both. Like the T1000E is supported by both. A lot of SP32 hardware is supported by both. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that are supported by both. I think there's 70-something devices that MeshCore has a slightly lower amount of supported devices. I think it's in the 60s, and Meshtastic might be in the upper 70s. But yeah, you wouldn't have trouble finding both. Yeah.
I'm curious how you got started with this and how you became passionate about it to learn all that you do.
I think it was something that I just found online, mainly. Like I was seeing a bunch of people talking about these mesh radio technologies, and I was like, oh, I bet you have to have a license or something to do this. And I was like, oh, you don't. So there was actually a talk at CPOS, I remember 2-3 years ago, also about Meshtastic. And that kind of pushed me over the edge and got me started. So yeah, that was that's how that happened.
Is that some sort of
Yeah.
Yep. It was a great talk.
Yeah.
Should be on the YouTube channel, maybe.
Yeah.
This is probably a very simple question, but what sort of messages does a person want to send?
It's a lot of test and not much more. Every night at 9 p.m., people will go out and be like, hello, checking in from, like somebody might be like checking in from Cornwall, another person will be like checking in from New Holland. You'll see a lot of that. People will like chat about what the weather's like. You'll occasionally be like, oh, I'm seeing rain in Cornwall, and then you're like, oh, great, here it comes.
It's just like Henry.
It's just, it's weather and testing. That's
What more do you need?
What?
What more do you need?
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? Yes.
You said the range is 250 miles. How long does it take? You said it takes 1 mile.
Well, so 250 miles, that was the record. That's like line of sight, 2 people on mountaintops, intentionally trying to get that long distance. In Lancaster, I think the longest direct link we have is 80 miles, and that's between 2 towers. So it isn't in Lancaster. In the Susquehanna Valley Mesh, the longest link we have is 80 miles, and that's only between 2 towers. But realistically, the most I've gotten out of a node like this is a 20-mile connection, which is still quite impressive when you think about it. But it really depends on conditions, line of sight, if there's anything blocking. even how you hold the node can slightly affect how far your message can get. Yeah, stuff like that really affects it. Did that fully answer?
But when you got a message from Connecticut, how long did it take to get from Connecticut?
Whatever. In theory, they aren't time stamped exactly, so I couldn't tell like when it was sent versus when I received it. But it's relatively fast. Yeah, relatively fast. I don't have like how many milliseconds it takes to arrive type answer for you, but it's not slow exactly. I would compare it similar speed to texting probably, like SMS-based texting.
Yeah, it's not really stored forward, so it's
Right.
like it's sit there retrying. It gets node hears you and repeats it, and that's about it.
Yeah.
It gets there in a second or two or testing.
Yeah. Meshtastic does actually have storing forward support on ESP32 devices. Nobody uses it, but it is there. So like if you had a node on a tower, you could do stuff like that. MeshCore has a cool thing called room servers. So kind of like you'd think of like the Slacker kind of somebody like the K3IR Spark Club in Mannheim has a MeshCore node up that also has a room server. It's kind of like a bulletin board system to some degree. You post a message and anybody can log in at any time and retrieve all those messages. Which it can be a little iffy, but overall it's a cool idea. I've used it a couple times, but yeah, just kind of like room servers like that type thing.
Cool. Thank you.